Perfect. Good afternoon, everybody, or morning, depending on what time you're going to see this stream. But right now, it's in the afternoon. And welcome, Garage Grit family. If you caught the latest episode of the Garage Grit podcast, it just landed on Spotify this morning. You'll know that we went deep into the alternative revenue streams for repair shops. We were joined by Tyson from Star Import and Bill from TrueFix Auto Works. And if you haven't listened yet, please make sure to check it out after this live session. It's packed with real world strategies, making extra revenue without overhauling your business. That's kind of the goal. We're not trying to completely turn your business on its head. We're saying, hey, how can we kind of massage things and add things? And it matters because, let's face it, there's seasonal, there's things that aren't in our control, from the economy to causing car count fluctuations to seasonal car count fluctuations. And if you're just focused on major repairs, then you're leaving yourself considerably vulnerable to even slower seasons. Now, one thing that's not going to be talked about during this live or during the podcast, which is the obvious starting point, maybe we touched on it a little bit, but maintenance services over major repairs. And the reason we didn't focus on it too much is because it's obvious and it's been done and we've been talking about it. Everyone's been talking about it for a long time. And so if you're just doing major repairs, that's actually your first step, is to move into teaching your customers to maintain their cars instead of waiting for them to completely just blow up on them. So this one, again, this episode and this live stream and the next several live streams are going to be about this podcast. And I'm asking you, the audience, to jump in with additional ideas and additional comments that I make today, as well as from the podcast. I want to dive even deeper into the conversation of how we can kind of tweak the shops so that we're just adding to the revenue streams instead of just turning it completely upside down. And so some of the topics that we've talked about briefly were ranging from rental cars to fleet services to detailing to pre-ownership inspections to flipping cars or salvaging car parts and selling the used parts, window tinting, wraps, protective coatings, and even ADAS calibrations. So again, surely the list can continue, and I would love to hear what ones we missed. So please add to it. Talk to me about what else we've done. What else can be done? Let's help our auto repair shop community. So if you have already listened to this week's episode, let me know that in the comments and which of the ones talked about stood out to you the most. And so let's start that conversation. All right. So again, if your business is only relying on broken cars, you've got a lot of outside factors that you are completely tied to. And our goal with these alternate revenue streams is to help store up for the rainy days, as well as kind of grow your business without turning it completely on its head. Let's evolve. Let's find new ways to serve those customers. And, a lot of shops across the nation, are advertising themselves or positioning themselves as dealership alternatives. And we talked about that at the podcast as well. So what things are the dealers doing that you're currently not doing? Is there any concierge type level services that you need to be offering to be that true dealership alternative? And so how often have you had a customer actually ask if you provide a particular service that you don't provide? And if you're starting to see a theme there, what was the topic? I'd be interested in hearing from you on it. And I'd be interested also in hearing from you on whether or not it was even feasible to add that to your service offerings. And a lot of times that's going to be analyzing the space that you have and the technicians that you have, and seeing what is plausible and what is not. But at least consider, if you have a recurring theme of people asking you for a particular service, that is the easiest way to identify a possible alternate revenue stream or an additional revenue stream. So with the new car market still kind of on the rise, and in my opinion, an inflated cost of new vehicle ownership, I still see used cars being a more valued purchase, but I also see them also escalating in price, and so people are trying to keep their cars a little bit longer. What are you seeing the same thing still? I mean, I know that was extremely prevalent just 2 years ago. Is it starting to level out, or is it still a situation where people are just trying to hold on to their cars, or are they starting to get back into the used car market? And when they are you willing to offer the service of a pre-purchase inspection where they can bring the car to you for a fee? You will actually help them evaluate what they're looking at with that car. And so, one of the things that we talked about, that we gave some advice during the podcast on what not to do. You'll have to check that out. But we also talked about how the average person really can appreciate that recommendation from you, or at least the insight, the eye that going into a purchase with their eyes wide open. It's a used car, so people are aware that, or some people are aware that it's not a perfect car, and it's going to need some work at some point. And what is that work going to be? And you're the one to actually help shed light on that, and potentially earning that customer long term. You might not even have that as an existing customer, or is it only offered for existing customers? Love to hear your feedback on that. That was also discussed during the podcast. Check that out. Um, you know, uh, with those inspections, we talked a little bit about how much people should charge for them. If you are charging, here's another possible option for comments. Please feel free to post what you're charging. Now, keep in mind, if you're reading this and you're checking this, you're listening to this, or you're reading the comments, and someone tells you that they're charging $250 for a pre-purchase inspection, that does not necessarily mean that you can charge $250 for a pre-purchase inspection, because the local market obviously plays a significant factor, whether they're in an affluent area or a rural area or an urban area or a more economically challenged area. So be aware of your market, be aware of what your competitors are doing, of course. But I'd be interested in hearing the range. What have you guys seen from a pre-purchase inspection cost? Is it just $50? Is it free? Is it, and if it's free, what's your game plan? Are you certain that you are getting that customer long term? So then it's a loss leader, or are you charging that 250 or more for the inspection? Glad to hear from you. All right, so let's move on to the second topic. And I was kind of surprised by this one. We talked a little bit about salvaging cars, specifically for their part, for either scrap metal or keeping the valued parts that you know are going to be used for other repairs, and offering that as an option for used parts going forward. So salvaging old cars, so, if you have access to that, and selling it for scrap, or keeping the used parts, kind of like a mini salvage yard, I guess. Of course, with that might come certain regulations that you might need to be aware. But it could make sense for the right shop to have that as a side hustle. Again, without actually turning your main business, your core competency, on its head. So who's doing that? Who else is doing that? I'd be interested in hearing how prevalent that is. 'Cause that was when I made my initial list of possible revenue streams. That was not on the top of the list, not even in the top 5. Speaking of top 5 and top 10, I mentioned this at the early part of this live. I'm very interested in continuing the brainstorming session. We did a little bit on the podcast. We covered about 6 or 7, maybe even 8 different ideas. What other ideas? Go listen to the podcast and then come back here and give me some additional ones that you've tried that were working for you. Next week, when we do the live, we're going to touch a little bit about storage and rental services. And we're also going to talk about detailing and appearance services. And so if you want to prep for that or plan to join us during the live conversation, feel free. And those are the topics for next week. So what things have you tried? What has worked? What hasn't worked? If you had a colossal fail and it's a fun story, hit me up. We'll do a quick video mini podcast, if you will, and we'll share that with everybody. If you had a huge success and it completely turned your business around and you're not afraid of sharing, I'd love to hear that as well. So please, by all means, let me know. And like I said, we can do a quick one-off recording and then share that with the community here. And guys, I want to encourage everybody. Everyone in this group, by and large, are shop managers or shop owners, and so feel free to post. We're going to be respectful, but feel free to post confidently. I fully expect that this is a type of community that we're going to have is one of helping each other out. So let's do that. All right. And I guess that's it. A couple of takeaways real quick. During that podcast, we covered a bunch of different revenue streams. And so again, go check it out. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, whatever your preference is. I'm very interested in brainstorming here to see what actually works for your shop. And I think you need to just take a look around. What do you have? What space do you have? What are your customers asking? And where are you at? Where's your market? And then answer those. But feel free to do some of that brainstorming right here inside the Garage Grit Podcast Facebook page. And feel free to turn on notifications so that you don't miss next week's live stream. And last but not least, go check out that podcast. Thank you to Tyson and to Bill. And I will see you next week.